Welcome to Equilibrium Echoes, the podcast where we delve into the transformative power of your inner world on your relationships. I'm your host, Alyssa Decker. Join me as we unlock the secrets of emotional equilibrium and dig deep into the tools and insights needed to foster healthier, more fulfilling relationships in ways that feel safe and authentic. Welcome back to Equilibrium Echoes. I'm your host, Alyssa Decker, and today we are talking about relationship anxiety. Now, I know if you're listening to this podcast or have an immediate reaction about sharing this episode with someone in your life just based on that topic, you've probably experienced a little bit of relationship anxiety at some point in your life. In fact, I think most of us have in one way or another. And our guest today is Chanel Ellie from Self-Cared For Counseling Services, and she is going to help us break down what relationship anxiety is, where it comes from, and some steps we can take to start dealing with it. So Chanel, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. So tell us a little bit about yourself and how you kind of got where you are today and what you do.
Okay. So again, my name is Chanel. I am a licensed therapist. I feel like that train was kind of starting at an early age. I feel like I can't even remember a time where I wasn't in therapy. I'm going to be honest. It's still to this day. And I really connected with one of my therapists when I was a teenager, and the way that she advocated for me, I think that was the first adult where I was just like, oh wow, like I'm not like a bad kid. Like I'm not crazy. Like somebody, like this person just advocates for people for a living. Like, what is this? I want to do this. So that's what I ended up doing as a career. I love it. And I think for the longest time, what a lot of therapists do is we just kind of get our feet wet. We see a lot of people with like depression and anxiety and transitional issues, and we got to figure out who our audience is, who are the people that we really enjoy working with. And when I sat down and thought about it, like what would my ideal client be? It would be somebody with relationship anxiety, people who have a hard time navigating relationships. I do a lot of kind of coaching with my clients of really opening their eyes to seeing the person that they are and just helping them to learn to embrace that person instead of fixing that person for somebody else. Because what I find is a lot of times people are coming to me and they're wanting me to fix them so that they can be a better partner or a better parent, a better friend. And my goal at the end of them working with me is to have them understand, like, there's nothing wrong with you. Like, let's celebrate the person that you are and teach the people around you how to love on you and make your relationships a little bit more comfortable. So that's kind of what I do on a day-to-day. I also facilitate mother hunger groups where I help women who have difficult relationships with their mother start setting boundaries in their relationships with their moms, with other people. A lot of the times, if you identify with mother hunger, you are walking around and you just have people who don't really understand what it's like to not have a strong relationship with their mom. Because a lot of people, especially women, we want that Gilmore Girls relationship. We want to be best friends and go get mani-pedis and do all the things. But if your mom is not cooperating and you're not connecting in that way, you start to feel like there's something wrong with me, because moms are supposed to just want to be your best friend. They're supposed to want to like do these things with you. Like, what's wrong with me? So when it's so powerful when you get these group of women together and they can say it out loud and they can talk about it and not feel judged, it's amazing. So I do those type of groups, and I'm also a mom of 2 small kids and a wife, and I'm just trying to balance everything the best I can.
Just like a lot of us, right? I feel like we all have so much going on, and it's easier to kind of, well, it's easy to look around and think, oh, they have so much more going on, or they have it together more.
Yes.
I had coffee with a friend this week, and she's like, you just have it all together. Like, how do you have it so together? And I was like, oh, honey, like,
yeah, I don't.
That's just the little part that you see.
Yes, exactly. I feel the same way.
Yeah. So let's start by kind of identifying what relationship anxiety is, what we're talking about, what this looks like, how it shows up in a relationship.
Yeah, definitely. So relationship anxiety, I feel like when people think about it, they only think about how you show up in romantic relationships. And that is a big part of it, but you can have relationship anxiety with your friends, with your family, with coworkers, with bosses. It's all about the anxiety that people have when it comes to their relationships. So a lot of the times what I see in my clients is a lot of like, something's wrong with me. I need to people please everyone in order for them to love me, because if I don't, then why would they love me? It's a lot of putting other people on a pedestal, trying to meet everybody else's needs, but not necessarily trying to meet your own needs, like neglecting some of the self-care for yourself so that you can be a better friend, a better mom, the moms especially, because that one is really hard. Because on one hand, we understand that we are supposed to take care of these kids that they can't take care of themselves. So it is an obligation, and we do have to give a little more in those relationships. But at the same time, and I'm a mom too, you are not going to be the best mom you can be if you're not taking care of yourself at all. So it's like finding the balance and just kind of recognizing that, just it's a lot of anxiety when it comes to relationships, or overthinking something that you said like 2 or 3 days ago, and like, oh my gosh, like what are people going to think of me? Constantly just waiting for the person to leave you and to no longer want to be friends with you. Just anxiety when it comes to relationships.
Got it. All right. So in contrast, what does a relationship look like when there is no relationship anxiety? I guess the way I could ask this is, what shifts do your clients see when they start dealing with their relationship anxiety? How does that change in the day-to-day of a relationship?
That is such a good question. I don't think anybody's asked me that before, but it's an important question, because I think when people enter therapy for relationship anxiety, or in general, they're expecting at the end of therapy to not have any anxiety, to not have any issues, everyth's fine, your relationships are perfect, and that's just not ever going to happen, ever.
No, it's not, because no relationship is ever perfect.
No, it's hard. Relationships are hard work, and I know people have said that before I got married, but it's hard. It's hard. It's beautiful. I love my husband. I love my life, but it's not easy. I feel like the easy route would be for me to just cuss him out every time he got on my nerves and like not think about the consequences of my behaviors. That's easy, but it's hard to think about your partner, prioritize their needs while you're also prioritizing yourself, constantly just coming together and compromising, trying to build this future together, having differences of opinions, and then trying to come together and have conversations, arguing in a constructive way. Like, I feel like those are the things that make up a healthy relationship. And when you have relationship anxiety, what tends to happen is that you're constantly giving in to your partner because you feel like, oh yeah, like they know better than me because they're great and I suck. So you're just doing everything that they want, neglecting your needs, and then you're starting to feel what happens when you neglect your own needs and you don't have the self-care. You're not hanging out with your friends, you're not getting enough sleep, you're constantly just doing all this work to make somebody else happy, but you're not making your own self happy. So when you come to therapy, my hope for my clients is to, like I said before, just to learn more about themselves, accept the person that they are. Like, for example, if you're the type of person who, I'll use myself as an example. I'm the type of person, I love people, obviously, because I'm a therapist. But at the same time, I think I see clients so much and I talk so much throughout the week that on the weekends, like, I'm tapped out. Like, I'm peopled out. I don't want to talk. I don't want to be social a lot of the times. And my husband is like a social butterfly. He wants to go out. He wants to hang out with friends and family. I'm just like, ugh. So if I wanted to be like a people pleaser, I'd just be like, oh, no, I'm just going to go and just push myself and not give myself the rest that I need. And then I'm not going to be the best partner later on the week. I'm going to be snippy and resentful and not really necessarily know why. I'm just coming off as irritable and you don't really know why. Or I'm snapping at the kids, or I'm mad, or my sex drive is off because I don't even want to touch you now because you done made me hang out with all these people. But I don't even know that logically.
Right.
But my body knows it. My body knows that I'm resentful and I'm tired and all that stuff. So that's a way where when you come to therapy, you learn these things about yourself. And then once you learn it, you just have to figure out ways to deal with it. So, for example, this weekend, maybe I have a family reunion. I can't get out of it. I'm just going to have the people. So maybe I need to have like some time alone on Friday night. So to Zen time and get the best me time that I can get. And then go to this family reunion and maybe have a couple of hours on Monday where I'm just like, whew, I gotta rest. I gotta sleep in on Monday because that was a lot. Like, just different ways of figuring it out. It's not necessarily like, oh, I'm not going to that family reunion. That's cutting into my me time. But just learning how to work around it. And maybe the next weekend I make sure I have nothing planned. So it's just all about when you are working on it and you feel like you're making progress, you see the progress in the decisions that you're making, the way that you communicate. You start to feel a little bit more confidence, because I think, myself included, I feel like I still have relationship anxiety. It's a lot better, but I feel like it's still there. So it's not going to necessarily go away, but you'll feel more confidence of like, no, that's not true. I don't think I was being rude in that situation, and let me explain to you why, and let me tell you some of the things that you could work on. But I think back in the day, I was never feeling comfortable doing that because I was told my whole life that I'm mean and rude and abrasive and confrontational, and that's how a lot of people see me. So I might have been like, oh, I was being abrasive right there. But no, I'm not being abrasive. I'm passionate and I want to tell you what I need.
Yeah. So what I hear you saying is that it's really about showing up differently in our relationships, because that creates a different feeling in our bodies and it sends our nervous system different messages. And I also think you didn't use the word safety when you were talking, but I think that's a big thing, is we think that feeling safe in a relationship is about how the other person treats us. And that is an aspect of it. But we can also create a feeling of unsafety for ourselves when we're constantly stressed out and anxious and worried about the other person's reaction and trying to manage all the little details. And so I think there's both exist, right? But we can play such a huge role in creating safety for ourselves.
Yes.
By how we show up for ourselves.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better myself. Safety is a huge thing when it comes to relationship anxiety too, and unfortunately sometimes the people in our life are just not able to give us that safety, like no matter how much you try. And then it's all about just kind of confronting that and figuring out what you're going to do moving forward.
Right. That age-old thing, you can't change the other person.
Oh, no. You can try. I mean, you can tell them, and hopefully maybe they'll value you as a person and the relationship enough to want to change if they can. But we don't really have control over that.
No, and the truth is they either will or they won't. Right? You can't change that response. You can ask, but their response will be determined by where they are, their emotional state, their all of those things. Okay, so how does relationship anxiety start? Like, how do we find ourselves as women in particular in this scenario?
Oh, it definitely starts in childhood. I don't think I've ever seen a client where it developed in adulthood. I think it can get worse with certain relationships when you become a young adult and start experiencing romantic relationships and issues with your peers and stuff like that. But a lot of the times it starts with your parents, it starts with your siblings, it starts with certain situations in school, and then how your family responds to that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Can you give
Very
me some
driven.
examples? Because I think we have this tendency, at least this is what I see in coaching, we have this tendency to gloss over our own childhood. Like, oh, everything was fine. It was great. And then when we really start breaking it down, we're like, oh, okay, maybe it wasn't as great as I thought. So give me some examples of like what it looks like in childhood, how this develops.
And I'm blanking on the actual word for it. I think it's something blind, but that is a phenomenon of it creates safety for you, because if you as a child feel like your parents don't love you, or like there's some traumatic stuff going on, it will wreck you as a child. So we become blind, we just don't, we refuse to see it. And then when people are trying to tell you, you're like, no, everything's fine. No, because you're taking away this fairy tale that I have. And if you take it away, like, what would happen to me? I don't want to think of my parents that way. So that's definitely a thing. Absolutely. And just have some compassion for yourself. If you're dealing with it with like a partner or a friend, have some compassion for them, because they might not be ready to deal with it yet. And that's okay. They'll deal with it when they're ready. But a lot of the things that I see, especially with women, I see this high rate of, for some reason, a lot of the women that come to me are eldest daughters in their house. So it's this thing, and it's not fully researched, but if you Google it, you'll probably see the gist of it. It's called eldest daughter syndrome, where the eldest daughter in the family, not necessarily the eldest child, because you could have an older brother, but the eldest daughter tends to have more of the responsibility. They are seen as like a pseudo parent, a pseudo spouse. They take care of all of their siblings. They do all the cooking and the cleaning. They're responsible. They're not the child that you have to worry about. So, and sometimes it comes up naturally too, because my daughter is the oldest. And if I'm not careful, like, I could get her into that state because she's hyper independent. She wants to take care of her little brother. And a lot of times I'm just like, girl, you don't have to do that. He has a mom. I'm right here. Go play or something. You don't have to do that.
Right.
That's not your responsibility.
Yeah. Yes,
But
it comes naturally for us. Like, I'm an oldest daughter, and my oldest daughter is very nurturing and caring with her younger siblings, and she will often take care of them without even being asked. And so, and she's also 15 years older than my youngest.
wow.
And so
Yeah.
it tends to naturally happen. And I do find myself having to push back and be like, this is not your responsibility. Even though so I can totally see how that could happen even unintentionally, like even without a parental like shove in that direction.
Yeah, but I do think that sometimes parents see the benefit of it and they're like, "Oh, she's actually taking care of her brother. I can sleep. I can do all these things," and then they hyper depend on it.
Yeah, right.
And sometimes they're very well meaning, like they don't understand like what's happening, or there's certain cultures that really depend on their daughters of like, no, you do take care of your brothers and the men in the house. This is what you're supposed to do. Let me mold you into that type of woman, because that's what our culture says that you should do. There are a lot of cultures who just praise their daughters of like, look how independent you are. I don't have to worry about you. Look at that. And then when you say things like that, when you give that messaging, they're like, oh, I'm not supposed to ask for help. I'm not supposed to make mistakes. If I make mistakes, then would they love me? And logically, they're not thinking those things, but in their bodies, in their beings, they feel it. They're like, ooh, I don't want to be like my sibling who's, look at all what they're talking about with my sibling. They're always praising me. This feels good. I'm gonna do that.
Right.
But that's not realistic for, it might be a little realistic for children, maybe, for the most part. Like if you have like a child who's like very well mannered and they don't give you a lot of problems, but eventually as they get older, you're going to see that you can't be perfect. So the job, you're
Right.
always going to have something going on that's not perfect. Or in a relationship, you're going to argue and somebody's going to be upset with you. And you're like, what? I'm not used to people not being happy with me. What is this? And then that's when it creates this anxiety of like, oh, I got to overdrive, please everybody. And it's just too much.
Yeah. And this is a delicate balance, I think, as parents, because we do have to teach our kids responsibility.
Yes.
And they should be involved in household tasks. But I think the distinguishing factor, or you tell me if I'm wrong on this, but I think the distinguishing factor is when it's a disproportionate amount of responsibility.
Yes.
And that is constantly changing over time.
Absolutely.
Now my daughter is 19. She does sometimes watch the kids overnight and I pay her. Yeah. That's completely different than if she's 12 years old and I'm asking her to watch kids all day, every day.
Yes.
And at that point, she's giving up things she shouldn't have to give up to take care of what should be my responsibility.
Absolutely. So if we're using the same example, if you have a 12-year-old who's taking care of their siblings all day, is that hindering their ability to be a child? Are they still able to have football games and go to parties and spend time with friends and study and sleep the appropriate amount of time? Are they able to be a kid? It's very much like developmentally, can they handle these things? A 12-year-old is not a mom, so they can't do the same things, and they shouldn't be expected to do the same things as I am, where I'm trying to make sure that I'm managing schedules, I'm cooking and I'm cleaning, with my husband's help, but like I'm a mom, right? So I'm doing all those things, and then I come home and I take care of these kids. But a 12-year-old shouldn't have that sense of responsibility because it's not fair. Developmentally, they're not ready for that. And it kind of rewires their brain into thinking like, oh, like I'm just supposed to take care of everybody. Like that's my job. This is what makes people happy. And when people are happy, I'm safe, I'm good. So my job is to make everybody else happy.
So some of that really goes back to what our parents communicate to us subconsciously or consciously. Yes. About where our value comes from, where our safety comes from, all of those kind of things, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to say this too, because I think sometimes, I don't know if you've seen this, but I've seen this trend on social media where people are saying that they no longer speak to their parents anymore, and it's the best decision that they ever make. And then you go into the comments and people are just like going in on them, just saying like, how could you do this to your parents? That's so mean. Like, what are you doing? And by no means I'm not promoting that that's what you should do. I just think that sometimes there are well-meaning parents, right? There are parents who are in poverty. They're in situations where they don't get the support that they need and they have to do things in order to survive. So the whole family is in survival mode. And my heart goes out to those type of parents. But I will say that you can logically know that and also grieve the fact that you didn't have a childhood and you were put in these type of situations. By no means am I saying ignore the fact that it's hard, the fact that you've developed relationship anxiety, the fact that all of the situations that you've gone through is tremendously hard. Like, don't ignore it. Both can be true, that your parents did the best that they can, but you're also struggling with some relationship anxiety as a result. So I just wanted to say that, because there are some parents who are just like, whatever, like, I don't care. I birthed you and you should just be forever grateful, and I don't care what happened to your childhood. Like, that's a completely different side. And then there's another side where parents are just like, we were broke. Like, you had to watch your brothers and sisters, or we were going to be out in the street. We were going to be in a homeless shelter. So those are completely separate situations, but both very valid.
Yeah, just because you have some trauma to grieve and work through does not necessarily mean that it was intentionally inflicted upon you.
Yes.
Sometimes it just happens.
Yes.
And sometimes we can also develop some of these things because of the way as kids we interpret things that may have not even been on the radar for that adult. Like, they may have no idea that we absorbed and interpreted something the way that we did, right?
Yeah. And when it comes to any type of anxiety, a lot of it is about control. So for parents, for example, we have no control over our kids. I'm sorry. We do the best that we can do. and the kids are just going to be raised the way they're just going to turn into the person that they are. So there are certain people who have gone through childhood trauma, but they come out at the end of it and they deal with it a lot better than other people. And it's just based off of who you are as a person. We have no control over what's going to happen to them. So I don't want parents to listen in and be like, oh my gosh, like I got to do this, I got to do that. But just like you said, like you notice you could fall into it, but this day and age, like parents just kind of know more than what our parents did back then.
Right. Yeah.
So it's just, we just are cognizant of it and we do the best that we can. Because sometimes I do need my daughter to go and get something while I'm taking care of a kid, of her little brother, or taking care of the dog or something like that. But I'm not hyper just focused on it, or just having her do it all the time. I think that's the balance. You just have to kind of find a balance.
Right. So as we grow up a little bit, we get into our teen years. Very often that's when the first romantic relationship happens, right? And nobody has any clue what they're doing at that point. So how does that play in? Like what that first relationship experience, I think, is a big deal for a lot of us.
Absolutely.
And maybe that's the first time when some of this relationship anxiety really comes into play. So talk about that a little bit.
I love that you even mentioned that, because I think a lot of the work that I do with my clients sometimes is going back to earlier situations, and they're just like, that happened so many years ago, like that's stupid, like why would I still hold on to that? I'm like, it's not stupid, like that's where you learned how to be in a relationship. So sometimes when we are teenagers, and teenagers are so focused on their peers and what their peers think of them, that's just developmentally appropriate at that time. That's just their peer relationships are their everything. So when they get that negative feedback, sometimes if they don't have an adult who can really talk to them about things and help them get through like the breakup or how they're being treated, they can take that and be like, oh, so I'm ugly, or oh, I'm not having sex with this guy, so nobody's gonna want me. I have to give my body to everybody, or whatever the belief kind of pops out. It just, we don't necessarily have any control over that.
And we don't even consciously know, usually, especially in our teens, because we're not that emotionally aware.
No.
At that point. No, none of us are. We don't even consciously know that we're absorbing these beliefs.
Yeah.
And that's something, unless we address it, is going to affect us for the rest of our lives.
Absolutely. And something about me is that I feel like I identify with mother hunger. I had a very difficult relationship with my mom. I was like obsessed with her and I loved her so much, but at the same time, it wasn't like the greatest relationship. She passed away a couple of years ago. And what took me a while to understand is that I was looking for that love that only a mom could give from a romantic partner. And I see that so much in my clients. So that's something that I wasn't aware that I was doing when I was a kid. I just thought I was boy crazy, and it was embarrassing. It takes some time to really figure those things out.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting that you say that too, because I think we have this idea, or I did in childhood, or less information. Maybe this is a case of like 2 decades ago we had a lot less information, but we have this idea that if girls are looking for validation, that is a father thing and not a mother thing. And so it's really interesting that you say that, because we focus on that a lot, right? Like if you have a problem with romantic relationships and they don't go well for you, then you probably have daddy issues. I mean, that's where we go. Like, yeah. So how is there a difference for us as women in our father relationship and our mother relationship, and how those affect us as adults?
I think there's a difference, but there's also always exceptions to the rule. I feel like, because I think I got a double whammy on my situation when it came to my dad. He wasn't really there either, and it hurt back then, but I think it hurt me more. Like, my mother hurt me more because she wasn't giving me the type of love that I needed. She was doing the best that she can, and I know that logically as an adult, but back then it just feels like rejection. So I felt like I was constantly getting rejected from her, but I only got rejected from my dad once because he just wasn't there. So I couldn't take it out on him. I couldn't do nothing about it. I wasn't sitting there trying to like people please him because he wasn't there. But my mom was, and it was just like rejection after rejection of like me just trying to have this positive relationship with her, and it just was not working for us. She loved me very much and she did the best that she could, but it just sometimes with mother hunger or just with any parent child relationship, your child has certain needs, and sometimes you can meet it and you do the best you can to meet it, and sometimes you just can't meet those needs and you're just doing the best that you can, and it's just hard. I do think that with fathers, it is the exact same way too. Like, you learn what it's like to have like a man's love, and that's very impactful too. But moms, your children, especially little girls, you're mirroring your mom. So your mom is teaching you how to be a woman. So it's just, it's different, and they're both very impactful.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe the difference is that your father is really is building that understanding for you of how a man should show up in a relationship, and how what you can expect from a relationship, whereas the mother is showing you how to be, or should be showing you how to be. And there's because we do model after that the mother. So how do we start sort of healing and retraining ourselves when we find ourselves here in our 30s or 40s and we're still dealing with this? Like, let's get into some practical like things that people can do to start really addressing some of this.
I think the first step is to just figure out what is the needs that you would like to get met. So if the need...
That's hard.
Yeah.
So many, we don't even know. We're so conditioned as women in society to not have needs. And if we have them, to not talk about them, right? Like, I talk to women all the time who are like, genuinely do not even know what their needs are.
That was me. And I'm not gonna, like, maybe a few years ago, I think when my mom passed away, a part of me died with her. Like, a part of me was just gone, and I had to figure out, because she's been there my entire life. Like, who am I without her? Like, what is this? So sometimes it takes until you are older. Sometimes I have like elderly clients who are just now realizing who they are and what they need. So for example, if you are feeling like you can relate to the term relationship anxiety, what do you need in your relationships? If you could feel safe in the relationship, if you can feel secure, if you can feel happy, confident, comfortable, what would that look like? And then just kind of taking it from there. So it could be, I want to feel like my partner isn't going to leave me. Take it from there. How can you get that need met? Whether it's couples counseling or regular counseling or self-help books to try to help with that. There's a few books that really help with finding the person that you are and figuring those things out. It doesn't always have to be therapy. Some people have anxiety attacks. So maybe that first step is going to a doctor and possibly getting medicated, or figuring out what's happening in your body and getting more connected in your body, whether it's like a trauma-informed trainer and I always say trauma-informed trainers, and I don't know how to find a lot of them, but I will say my trainer changed my life. That was my go-to, where he was just like, I'm noticing like your body is just reacting really like it's setting off like you're not safe, and these certain situations. He's having me doing like Kegel breathing and all these things. I'm just like, this is weird, but I feel so connected now. Like he would watch me dissociate and he's like, you gotta feel it, Chanel. Come on, come back to me.
Mm-hmm.
So healing can be whatever you want it to be, but I think the first thing is just to name the thing. What is it that you need? And then what are those avenues to get you there? So to feel safe in my body, my trainer really helped me. I've gone to Reiki. That's been amazing. Therapy, finding a good therapist to walk through these things with has been an amazing thing. Support groups, like I do the mother hunger groups, but there are other type of support groups out there for moms, for parents, for caretakers, for kids, for all type. There's support groups all over the place. So just looking for that kind of stuff. There's even like equine therapy where you can work with horses, which is mind blowing when you witness it. So yeah, just being curious. If it's something like you want to be more creative, maybe you need to do some art therapy or go to an art class and make some new friends doing that. It's whatever you want it to be.
Yeah. So you said something there that I thought was really interesting about just now about getting curious. Mm. And, I was talking to somebody else a few weeks ago on this podcast, and we were discussing this correlation between shame and curiosity. Mm. And how when we're dealing and we're feeling a lot of shame, it prevents us oftentimes from being curious.
Yes.
And so if you're sitting there going, I don't even know how to figure out how to start asking the questions to figure out what I need or what I want, something that may help is just to sit down and share your story. Start talking to someone that you can trust. Because when we start talking about things that we feel shame about, it starts to release us from that shame. And that then frees us up to start getting curious about ourselves. Like, I know for me, there was a time when I had no idea what I needed, what I wanted, what I liked. Like, I was so stuck in this cycle of like everything about my life is about pleasing other people, about managing their emotions, about trying to keep everybody safe and happy, that I totally lost sight of who I was and what I needed or what I wanted. And a lot of that had to do, the fact that I couldn't connect with that part of myself had a lot to do with the shame that I felt about who I was. I felt shame. It sounds so counterintuitive, I guess, but the shame I felt about not knowing who I was and losing myself was exactly what was keeping me from being able to ask the questions and get in touch with myself again. And so I just wanted to say, like, if that's where you find yourself, like, maybe the first step for you is just starting to share with someone, a trusted friend. It might be a counselor or a coach or therapist if you don't have a friendship on that level. But there's something about just opening up and sharing our story that can change so much, isn't there?
Yes. Oh, yes, absolutely. And the key thing that I heard you say is somebody that you trust. Somebody that you trust and that you know is going to take it in the way that you need to take it. Because I will say there are a lot of well-meaning people out there, but they still kind of give you those messages, like those backhanded compliments that will make you revert back and feel shame again. And I think that's why a lot of my clients come to me like a therapist, because they're just like, they're well-meaning, but people are just pretty much saying like, why would you talk to your mom that way? Why would you like stop talking to her? Why are you doing this? Like, that's just not nice. You only get one mom, and they're trying to help you. Like, no, you just need to talk to her. Like, don't you think I tried that? I tried that a lot. Not working.
If it was that easy, I would have already fixed it.
But they're so well-meaning, and then it reverts back to the shame cycle of like, there's something wrong with me. I'm just a mean person. I don't know why my mom doesn't love me. I don't get it. Like those type of feelings. But definitely talking to somebody you trust, it releases the shame, or it starts to release it, because shame wants you to keep it all in. Shame wants you to isolate and be like, oh my gosh, these people knew this about me. I would have no friends. Nobody would want me, and I wouldn't have a job.
Yeah.
we gotta not feed the shame monster and just be like, no, see that one person, they still love me and they know this about me, and then just slow walk it from there. I love that idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So after we start to identify what we really need, what comes next?
I guess doing some resourcing and Google searches. I feel like Google is just a wealth of knowledge, especially at least getting you to in the right path, in the right direction. Figuring out, okay, now that I know what I need, how do I get those needs met? Because we might have an idea of how to get those needs met, but we don't know like the steps. And I think it's just very dependent on what the issue is. So reaching out to a friend and asking them for support. If you know a therapist, ask them. Like I have plenty of my friends and my families who reach out to me and say like, I've tried therapy and I don't feel like it worked for me. And I ask some more clarifying questions and I can at least get them onto the right path. Or, this is off topic, but like I'm not an accountant, so I have a friend who is better with money and she can get me in the right direction of places. So just finding a community or talking to people, asking for help. Usually when you go out and you start looking for these things, it's at least going to get you in the right direction. So if you were to call a certain professional and they're like, that's out of my scope of practice, but maybe you should try this. And then you just keep trying when you feel like you're ready to do so, because sometimes that can be exhausting too. So for example, I would never suggest to like somebody who just had a newborn, yeah, go out there and keep looking right now. No, you're exhausted and you got a baby.
Right.
No, like when you feel like you can do it, just take note and do it at your own pace. But it's not a race. You just kind of do the best that you can. And also, and this might not feel warm and fuzzy, but sometimes you don't necessarily know the answer, and that's okay. Just trusting that you're going to continue to get feedback and continue to assess, and then you'll find the answer. You'll figure it out eventually. Like, I don't want people to feel this pressure. Not saying that you have said this at all, but I think that sometimes people feel pressure of like, I need to figure out who I am now. I gotta fix this now. But no.
It's a journey.
You might not. Yeah, it's a journey. So just continue to take feedback. Like, oh, I liked it when I did that paint class with my girlfriends. I should do more paint classes. I should get paint by numbers and see how it feels for you. Or, ooh, I really didn't like doing that, and figure out why didn't I like that? I didn't like the way that yoga person was like moving my body around. Maybe I just need to find a new yoga person, or is there different types of yoga, or maybe I just don't like yoga. Just really like taking in feedback and taking it from there.
And part of that process is just learning to accept yourself for who you are. You know, just like you said, like maybe I need a different type of yoga, or maybe I just don't like yoga.
Yeah,
right?
and that's okay.
But you have to be right. But you got to be willing to accept whatever it is that you learn about yourself. There's no right or wrong. It's just discovery. And the other thing, I was listening to you and I was thinking, everything that you're talking about here, none of that is about running to your partner and demanding that they suddenly meet these needs. Like what you were talking about was much more focused on how do I start to put myself in situations where my needs are getting met? How do I start meeting my own needs? Yeah. And that's really important, isn't it? That we're not like placing all of this expectation on meeting our needs on our partner.
Absolutely. Because I do see clients who they're in very, very unhealthy relationships where their partner is not taking care of them and being very selfish and things like that. But it's not necessarily, it is about that, but it's more about like you got in this relationship, this person showed you who they were in the beginning and you chose to marry them and stick by them. Let's talk about how you got there, and then like just work on you, and then we can start talking to your partner and setting boundaries and things like that. But how can you set boundaries when you don't even know what you need yet?
Right.
So you can't necessarily demand, because anything from your partner if you don't know what you need. And then also sometimes what I find is when people are demanding things from their partners, that's not necessarily healthy too, because you're supposed to be meeting your own needs.
Right.
I mean, obviously there's some needs that a partner could probably meet a little bit better than you, but it's just for the most part, it's just all about like learning things about you and showing up differently in the relationship. Because it's funny when I feel like boundaries is like a buzzword that a lot of people talk about, and I love it because I love talking about boundaries. But at the same time, I tell people all the time, you can set boundaries without telling the person that you're setting boundaries. You don't have to go and be like, I'm never speaking to you ever again. I'm not going to any more of your parties. Like, just don't show up to their parties and give an excuse. You don't have to say it. Just set the boundaries for you, not to like broadcast it to everybody and demand people do things for you.
Right. Yes, because your boundary is about what you're going to do if something happens, not about trying to make the other person behave better.
Yeah, like an ultimatum. But ultimatums aren't necessary sometimes. It all depends.
I always say, if you're going to give an ultimatum, just be prepared for any of the possible outcomes, because you don't know.
Yeah.
Right? We think we know. Oh, if I give him an ultimatum, then he'll shape up because he loves me. Well, you don't know. Like, if you're going to go in that territory, you got to be prepared for any possible outcome.
Yeah, and even that statement, how do you know that that's not the way that he shows love? He might love you. He just might not be able to give you what you want. And that's a whole different conversation. And I just think that a lot of the things when it comes to therapy and relationships, it's never cut and dry. There's always so many situations, so many personalities, childhood issues, peers, pets, kids. Like, everybody has a very unique situation. So that's why I feel like therapy is so beautiful, because it's just, my job isn't to fix you or to tell you what to do. My job is to ask a lot of clarifying questions and give you a space where you feel safe enough to talk about the things that you want. So maybe you don't know yourself yet, but I might ask you some questions of like, how does that feel though when he talks to you like that? Well, it feels like this. When have you felt like that before? Like, have you ever felt like that in childhood? All the time. Well, let's talk about that, because I feel like maybe the feelings that are coming up for you right now, it has nothing to do with him. It has to do with that painful stuff that happened throughout childhood. And I'm just like asking clarifying questions and opening your mind up. And then eventually you tell me what you want. You're telling yourself what you want. I'm not saying nothing.
Right.
That's not my job.
Right. I love that, because our feelings, we tend to blame our feelings on our circumstances. And in reality, our feelings can be completely separate from our circumstances. You know, you can be in the exact same scenario, and what is happening in your body, in your mind, and in your body and in your nervous system can be completely different. And you'll have a completely different experience, even though the circumstances are the same.
I try to teach my 7-year-old this. My daughter just turned 7, and she came to me one day. She's a Cancer, so she's very emotional. She has a lot of me in her. She's just very sensitive. And she said, Mommy, I just ruined your day, and I tried so hard for you to have a good day today. I said, you don't have any control over me and my feelings in my day. Like, sure, if you weren't having temper tantrums all over the place, maybe it would impact my day, but Mommy is in charge of her feelings. Like, that has nothing to do with you. And I think that's something that a lot of people should understand, that your feelings, it's all like dependent on what's going on with you. And my daughter does not have the ability to make or break my day. It's my responsibility to figure out what's going on with myself, and then to self-resource and to calm down and to use my coping skills. That's my responsibility, not hers, not anybody else's, not your boss. Of course, it would be nice if people were just nice, but they're not always.
No, they're
so we
not.
have to figure out how to deal with that, because that's just life.
Yeah. Yeah, and when you give that responsibility to someone else, you're really just giving your own power away.
Yes.
And that always has the opposite of the intended effect.
Yes. And we're always in a work in progress too. I want to say that too, because I feel like I have relationship anxiety, and there's sometimes when my mind will go crazy when I'm really tired and I'm not taking care of myself. I'm like, oh my gosh, my husband's gonna leave me. He's so mad. He's been mad for days, and it ain't got nothing to do with me. It's just like some anxious thoughts just creeping in, but then I know more about what I need and how to resource and what to do and how to prompt him in conversation of like, what's really going on with you? Versus in the past, I would just feel like, oh, he's not happy. I'm a horrible wife. I got to do something differently. Maybe the house is a mess. Maybe I need to have sex with him more. Maybe I need to do this. Maybe I need to do that. And it's like all about me. And in real life, it ain't nothing to do with me. He just had a hard day at work, a hard week.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah.
The goal is not perfection. The goal is skill building. Mm-hmm. And teaching ourselves new things. And it's a process. Like everybody fails the test or gets some wrong answers sometimes. Mm-hmm. Like we just keep learning and growing and moving on.
Yeah. I remember when I first became a therapist, I would look at other therapists and be like, oh, it looks so easy for them. Like I want to be like that. And then the more therapists I talk to, they're just like, no, it's hard for all of us. It's always hard. Some clients are harder, some situations are harder, some of them are easier, but no, it's always hard. It's never easy. I'm like, oh, okay. Like it just looks easier sometimes from the outside looking in.
Always. Mm-hmm. It always does. This work is easier for everybody but me.
Yeah. No, that's not true. That's the shame monster talking. Don't feed him. Like, starve that shame monster.
Yes, totally. Yeah. All right. So Chanel, tell people how they can connect with you, how they can find you online and work with you.
Okay. So you can find me. My website is Self-Cared For Counseling Services. Or no, it's not. It's selfcaredfor.com. That's what it is. And you can put in some information to reach out to me. My care coordinator is amazing. Her name is Melanie. People love her. So if you'll probably get her first, we can schedule a free 15-minute consultation. If you live in Maryland, Virginia, or DC, I can be your therapist. Otherwise, I cannot because I don't have licenses anywhere else. But if you want to join one of my mother hunger groups, you can do the same thing. Just go to the website and we can get started with the mother hunger groups. They're all virtual. I run them a few times throughout the year, depending on how big the wait list is. And that is just an opportunity where we meet on Zoom together for an hour at a time, and we build a community together where we talk about our moms and the impacts that that lack of relationship that you really, really want, but you can't have, and what that does for you. I'm also on social media. I'm on TikTok and Instagram mostly. So TikTok is Cheers to Reality Tears, where people go in my comments on the videos, and I always respond. Most of the time I'm responding. So if you're not ready for a response, don't come. And I'm not being mean or anything, but I always like to explain like where I'm coming from to people, and that's just my way of giving back. I can't always have free sessions for people, but I want to at least give them, you know, some ideas of where I'm coming from in these videos. And on Instagram, Chanel is Self-Cared For, I believe. And I also have a podcast called Reality Check Therapy Hour with my friend Maggie Blackburn, who is also a therapist, where we kiki and talk and laugh about reality TV shows and talk about it from a therapeutic lens, but also from a listener's, just like girlfriend's point of view too. So we try to have fun with it, but also just be like, and this girl is tripping, and this is why. Like, we already know about her dad. This is why she's acting like this. But she can't be talking to this other person like that, and just, you know, just real conversation. So it's a lot of fun.
I love it. Yeah, I can't wait to look that up.
Yeah.
So give us one parting thought for people who are listening and dealing with some relationship anxiety. What's the one thing you would like to leave us with today?
That there is nothing wrong with you. I don't care who you are. And I don't care what happened. And I don't care what you've done. There is nothing wrong with you. we're all out here. I don't make the best decisions all the time. I don't talk to my husband nicely all the time and like my nice therapeutic tone. We are all human. It's okay. We all make mistakes. We all do things that we're not proud of, and there is nothing wrong with you, and you still deserve the world. I don't care what you did. Unless you're out here like really hurting people, like people like Jeffrey Dahmer or something. Other than that, there's nothing wrong with you.
Yeah, if you're a serial killer, don't do that. Stop
don't do that. No. There's something wrong with you. You need to get some help.
Right. Having things to learn does not mean that you are broken.
No.
We are all on this journey together.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Chanel, for taking the time to talk to us today and share your experience and help us work on our relationship anxiety, move further into health. I really appreciate you being here with us.
Thank you so much. It was so much fun.
Thanks for joining me for another episode of Equilibrium Echoes. If you would like to learn more about the podcast, visit www.coachingwithalyssa.com/podcast. And while you're there, book your free consultation and download the preview of my new book, Marriage is Hard and Other Lies I Believed. I'll see you in the next episode.